Hello everyone, is this audible?
Yes, Dr. Jam, it is audible. You can
Okay.
go ahead.
Dear all, welcome to the first session of day 3 of MIPS 2020. A very good morning to Honorable Director Sir, Professor Lalit Kumar Avasthi, the Chief Guest, Professor Amit Patra, the Head of Department of Instrumentation and Control Engineering, Dr. Rajesh Singla, the faculty members and deans of NIT Jalandhar, the distinguished speakers of this STC, and dear participants. On the behalf of the organizing team of MIPS 2020, I, Dr. Karan Jain, welcome you all to the first session of day 3 of MIPS 2020. I request Dr. Om Prakash Verma to continue. Please stay tuned. We are about to start the proceedings in just few seconds.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. O.P. Verma from NIT Jalandhar. As a course coordinator, Dr. Milipant is going to join in some moment. So as she join, we will start the proceeding of today. Okay. So please stay tuned. Thank you. Hello everyone. Dr. Mili has joined. So a very good morning to you and all. I'm Dr. Om Prakash Verma, Assistant Professor in Department of IC. On behalf of NIPS 2020, I welcome you all in the first session of third day. As you know, today AI has become synonymous with progress via computing. However, not all AI is created equal, and for AI to fulfill its many promises, it needs to be creative. Let's start by addressing what I mean by creative. My explanation involves two different types of artificial intelligence nowadays. First one is the deep learning, and second one is the evolutionary computation. Deep learning is well established in technical circles. Researchers have used its core technology with ANN since 1980, and it has transformed much of what we consider to be AI today. And now, with the introduction of big data and large computing capacity, deep learning has become integral in a number of real-world applications. Now, in the progress of AI, next step is evolutionary computation. This type of AI is based on algorithm inspired by biological evolution. Through reproduction, mutation, recombination, and selection, evolutionary computation performs a parallel exploratory search for solutions. Because this technology is based on population of solution rather than a single continuously refined solution, it can be afford to try out novel ideas and discover solutions that are surprising and creative. In this series, as a course coordinator, it is now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Milipant, a very amazing and inspiring speaker. She is currently associated with the IIT Roorkee as associate professor. Dr. Pant's research and development experience include more than 20 years in the academia. She works in a multidisciplinary environment, including soft computing, evolutionary algorithm, machine network intelligence, data mining, and applied to various real-world problems. She has given more than 50 plus conference, plenary lectures, tutorials, and invited seminars, lecture in over 100 universities around the globe. As an investigator, co-investigator, she has won various research grants funded from various government agencies such as DST, MHRD, and international collaboration also. In these areas, she has co-authored more than 300 research publications, out of which 5 books covering various aspects of computer science. About 100 plus publications indexed by Scopus SCI. Under her direct academic supervision, 12 students received PhD degrees and is currently supervising 7 PhD students. She is editor and as well as the reviewer of many reputed journals. So without taking much more time, I would like to hand over the session to my guru, Dr. Milipant. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Verma. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. Dr. Verma was a student here in IIT Roorkee, and he was just a very good student. And he also has some good publications while doing PhD, and after that also he is working continuously, and he's doing a very good work. Uh, but there was a I think he exaggerated my profile a bit, but thank you so much. And my experience is not 20 years right now in academia. It I hope it will go up to 20 years, but presently it's not 20. So I think we should start the presentation now.
Yes, madam, you are welcome. This is
Yeah,
Dr. Karan.
yeah. Hello, Dr. Karanjan. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
You're welcome,
And
ma'am.
I was a bit apprehensive seeing the title of the this workshop, because this is not really my forte, physiology. But I think optimization can be jailed into many things, and physiology can be one of them. Um, I'll share my presentation. It always takes me 1 or 2 minutes to get my slides in order for presentation.
Okay, sure, ma'am.
So are the slides visible? Can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am, we can see the slides. You can make it full screen.
Yeah, I have made it full screen. Is it
Yes,
not coming to be full
yeah, yeah.
screen?
Yes, it's absolutely fine, ma'am.
So, okay, fine. So the title of the talk is about particle form optimization and differential evolution. These two algorithms, they were proposed, both the algorithms were proposed sometimes in 1995. But in my opinion, these two algorithms are still one of the most popular algorithms besides genetic algorithms. And all these algorithms can be placed under an umbrella term of nature-inspired algorithms, because both these are inspired in some way or the other by the various natural phenomena that happen around us. But before we go into the detail of these algorithms, we'll have a very brief introduction of optimization, because optimization is the field where these two algorithms are most applicable, where the application of these algorithms is most appropriate. So these are the contents which we are going to discuss today. So coming to optimization, in a very basic sense, optimization means that we are either trying to maximize something or we are trying to minimize something. And these are the formal definitions of, these are some of the formal terms associated with the optimization, that whenever we are trying to find an optimal value for a function, it is called optimization. And the function which we are trying to optimize is called the objective function. Objective function is also known as the cost function. Then secondly, we should be aware of the domain in which we are going to optimize our function. This domain is formed by the set of constraints that we have in a problem, because every problem has some inherent restrictions built into it, which forms its area, which define the boundary of the problem, which is, and these boundaries are called the constraints. And in optimization, our ultimate aim is to find the values of the decision variables. That is, the variables through which we are forming our objective function. In the most basic sense, the optimization problem can be defined in the unconstrained form as follows. And the constraint form may be defined in the following manner, in which we have some well-defined restrictions, which are defined here as gx and hx. In the unconstrained optimization problem, the only boundaries that we have, that is the only limitations that we have, is on the design variables. Design variables are the variables, simply the variables, but we call them design variables because they help us in designing the problem. They help us in formulating the nature of the problem that we are having. So and secondly, in the constrained optimization problem, the inequalities or equations can be present in the form of constraints. So, okay, this is an example of unconstrained optimization problem where we'll see the terminology associated. So as I told you, the objective function is also known as the fitness function or the cost function. This fitness function term was particularly, you can say it was first introduced when genetic algorithms were proposed. In that, the objective function was called the fitness function. X is the design variable, and the boundaries that are there on X are called the bound constraints. Here, X varies from -5 to 5, which is representing a rectangular hyperplane if we go in higher order, when we take the value of n more than 3. So this was a simple optimization problem. It is a non-linear optimization problem in which the solution will lie at 0. Another terms associated with the optimization problems are local and global optimal solution. Now, why these things are important is because once you are aware of the nature of the problem, once you are aware of the type of the problem that you are dealing with, it will be easier for you to apply the algorithm. It will be easier for you to decide the type of algorithm that will be more suitable for your problem. So local and global optimization is present. Local and global optimal solutions are present in the problem which are non-linear in nature, and non-linearity occurs in most of the real life optimization problems. Whenever we are talking about optimization, whenever we are talking about the solution for an optimization problem, we always think whether the problem has several local solutions, whether we are interested or whether a local solution is enough for us, or we have to go for a global optimal solution. And these are the terms associated only with non-linear optimization models. This is an example. This is an example of a non-linear optimization problem which has a local as well as the global solution. And just as a part of information, a problem can have several local and several global optimal solutions present in it. Another example. I won't go into the details of defining what are global and local optimal solutions, but here you can easily see that the solution that is giving you the best value for a given problem is called the global solution, and the solutions that are giving you the next best values are called the local optimal solutions. This problem has several local and global optimal solutions, and it becomes difficult for an optimization problem to search for the exact solution or to search for the best solution. Now, as I said that if you are aware of the type of the problem that you are dealing with, it will be easier for you to identify the optimization technique that you can do, that you can use in order to solve your problem. So optimization problems can be classified in many ways. In this slide, I am giving you a general description, but other than this also you can find in textbooks the type in according to which we can classify optimization problems. So here I have classified the optimization problems on the basis of existence of constraints, on the nature of design variables, on the nature of the variables in terms of deterministic or probabilistic, nature of the equations evolved. Nature of the equation evolved means whether we are getting a linear programming problem or we are getting a non-linear programming problem. Then if your problem is linear, then again, with the help of design variables, we can understand whether the problem is an integer programming problem or a binary variable or a binary programming problem. This can happen in case of non-linear problems also, non-linear integer programming problems, non-linear binary problems. So here, integer and binary are, the nature is due to the design variables. Whether your design variables are integer in nature, they are real in nature, or they are binary in nature. And then the number of objective functions, that is whether we are dealing with a single objective optimization problem or we are dealing with a problem that has a number of objectives, that is that we have to optimize more than one objective simultaneously. Then convexity of functions and decision variables, this is slightly more complicated and it is more mathematical also in nature, and in most of the cases we assume that the problem that we are dealing with is convex in nature. Here you can see on the basis of equations how our optimization problem looks like. It is very important nowadays that whenever you are defining a problem, you should define its nature also. How your problem will, or what is the behavior of your problem. This is very important in terms of paper writing also, and in terms of doing research also, that the nature of the problem should be explained properly, because then you will be able to justify the technique that you are using on your problem, the technique that you are using for your problem. This is the nature of the equation involved, that is whether our problem is a linear programming problem or it is a non-linear programming problem. Number of objective functions, single objective optimization, multi-objective optimization problems. Convexity, as I told you, the problem may be convex in nature or it may be non-convex in nature. Non-convex, if the problem comes out to be non-convex in nature, it becomes very difficult to solve it with the help of the usual optimization algorithms that we are having. Design variables, it can be continuous, it can be discrete, it can be binary, it can be anything. It can be anything. Once it is discrete, it can be combinatorial also. And I mean, the nature of the decision variables plays an important role in identifying the type of algorithm or the type of technique that you are going to use, because there are several optimization techniques that are based particularly on the nature of the design variables. So if you are aware of the nature of the design variable and the nature of the problem, then you can directly apply that particular method. This figure just shows you that what is the taxonomy of optimization problems. Nowadays, with the growing complexity of the real-world optimization problems, it is very difficult to identify the nature of the problem in a single manner. That is, in one word, we cannot define our problem. Our problem may be a constrained optimization problem, which is non-convex, which is having multiple objectives, which is non-linear in nature, and so on. So you can see here that the taxonomy forms a star topology sort of a figure in which everything is connected to another thing. That is, through this slide, we are trying to convey that the exact nature of the optimization problems is very difficult to identify. And this is an important point because of this point, we go to higher level optimization algorithms, which are like evolutionary algorithms. Solution methodologies, we also call them classical optimization methods, which are mostly based on, most of the classical optimization methods are based on the, they make use of calculus approach in finding the optimal solution for a given problem. And they make use of the auxiliary properties of the objective function and the constraints. whatever is written here is, whatever I'm telling you is written here in slightly different words. Auxiliary means that we should be aware of the mathematical properties of a given function and the constraints, that is, whether the function is continuous, whether it is differentiable, and so on. So if these things are known to us, if we exactly know about the nature of the problem, then we can apply any of the classical optimization techniques, because an advantage of these classical optimization techniques is that it will give you the exact solution. It will give you the accurate solution. These are some of the most well-known and most used optimization methods. These are classical optimization methods. Simplex method is still the most favored algorithm, or you can say it is the only algorithm for solving linear programming problems. Although we do make use of meta heuristics for solving linear programming problems, but then our justification should be very strong, that what is the reason why we are using a meta heuristic for a linear programming problem. Then golden section, Fibonacci, bisection, Newton-Raphson. Newton-Raphson, I'll come later. Golden section, Fibonacci, and bisection methods. These are numerical search techniques which do not depend upon the derivative or the auxiliary nature of the problem. Newton-Raphson, of course, it makes use of derivative. Then cyclic coordinate method also makes use of derivatives. These are called gradient-based methods, and these are for single variable problems. The last four methods that are mentioned here, these are gradient-based methods for multidimensional search. That is, it can have more than one, they can be used for solving problems having more than one variable. Then these are some methods for nonlinear constraint programming problems. These are quadratic, geometric, and dynamic programming algorithms. But the question is, how can we proceed when we are dealing with more complex problems? And complexity here is, by complexity, here we mean that whether the problem is having a very large number of variables, or the search space or the domain of the problem is very large. That is, the search space is so big that it becomes difficult for the optimization algorithm to find the solution. Then is the problem, are the auxiliary properties of the problem not known to us, or the auxiliary properties of a problem are very difficult to determine? That is, it is very difficult to find the differential of a given problem, the differentiation of a given problem. It becomes very difficult. Then we call that the given problem is complex in nature. So once the problem becomes complex, then we have to decide which method we have to use. So again, broadly, if we say that our optimization methods can be divided into two types, deterministic and probabilistic. Deterministic solution methodologies are the ones in which we know about the previous solution, and based on that, we move on to the next solution. Whereas in probabilistic optimization methods, we make use of probability. That is, we make use of randomness in the search space, or we also call it that these techniques are stochastic in nature. Because of the stochasticity, or because of the probabilistic nature of the solution methodology or the optimization method, it becomes easier for us to traverse in the search space. So here is a very small comparison between probabilistic and deterministic optimization methods. If we talk about the search space, then in probabilistic methods, we make use of a population of potential solutions. Potential solution means that the solutions that are satisfying the boundary conditions. Whereas in deterministic, we make use of a single point is generated, and that point moves in the entire search space. So naturally, the searching process in a deterministic optimization method will be slow in comparison to probabilistic, because in deterministic, one point is trying to search the entire domain of the problem, whereas in probabilistic, a number of points, multiple number of points are trying to search the space together. Motivation for deterministic methods, they are based on some strong mathematical property, that is whether the gradient conditions, the Bayesian conditions, etc. Whereas for probabilistic methods, the motivation is generally some natural analogy or some evolutionary analogy and so on. So this thing also, the motivation part also makes the nature inspired algorithm more attractive, because then the user can identify the working of the algorithm in a better manner. Applicability, since the probabilistic methods do not depend on the nature of the problem that we are having, they have a wider applicability in comparison to deterministic methods, which depend on the nature of the problem. Then point transition, that is how the solution points are moving in the search space. So this again is probabilistic or deterministic. We make use of randomness when we are talking about the probabilistic optimization methods. And if we come to prerequisite, then only the objective function should be known to us properly in case of probabilistic optimization methods, if we are talking of unconstrained optimization problem. And in deterministic problems, besides having the equation for objective and constraints, we should also have the knowledge of the nature of the optimization problem that we are having. That is, auxiliary nature of the optimization problem should also be known to us. That is what whether the problem is continuous, whether it is differentiable, what is the type of gradient that it is having, and like that. Initial guess, you must have already seen, you must have worked on at least one of the numerical optimization method. I believe the Newton-Raphson method must have been used by all of you. And in the biggest drawback, although the convergence rate of Newton-Raphson method is very high, but one of the drawbacks is if the initial guess is not correct, then the entire process will not work properly. There are other drawbacks also of Newton-Raphson method, but if we talk about initial guess, then if the initial guess is not correct, Newton-Raphson will take more iterations to converge. Whereas in probabilistic methods, the initial guess is generated randomly. Whatever algorithm you are using, then you will be able to generate a number of initial guesses. So at least one of the guess will take you to the correct solution. Then flow of control, that is how we are controlling all the points that are there. So all the points are controlled parallelly, that is simultaneously, in case of nature-inspired algorithms. That is, whatever mathematical operation we are going to perform, it will be on all the points of the solution space that we have selected. Whereas in deterministic methods, since we are dealing with a single point only, the transition will be, or the flow of control will be serial in nature. That is, one point will move to another point, then some mathematical operation will take place, and then it will move to some other place, and so on. The results for both the methods are actually, even in case of probabilistic methods, there is no guarantee that you will be getting the global optimal solution. But the point is, you will be getting the best possible solution. Whereas in case of deterministic methods, more or less, all the deterministic methods, they guarantee to provide a local optimal solution. And that too depend on the type of initial guess that we are having. So advantages for nature-inspired algorithms can be global search methods, the parallel speed, in wide applicability, and so on. Whereas in case of deterministic methods, the most important advantage is that they have a convergence proof. That is, whatever solution you are getting, you can say with guarantee that this is the best solution because I can prove it. Whereas in probabilistic methods, you have to depend on the person who is giving you the problem. If the solution is acceptable to the person, it's okay. But if the person is assuming the solution can be better, then there is no way that you can prove that no, the solution that I'm giving you is the best solution. Then coming to the drawbacks. So convergence proof, no general convergence proof is the biggest disadvantage of probabilistic methods because we cannot prove it theoretically. We cannot prove theoretically that whatever solution we are getting is the best solution. We can only give an approximate value. We can only say that the algorithm that we are using is able to provide this particular solution. And we can also say that the algorithm that we are using was able to give best solution in most of the test problems. Therefore, the solution that we are providing you should be the best solution. And in case of these stochastic methods, in case of deterministic methods, the disadvantages, the locality, that is, they mostly provide you the local optimal solution. Mostly they will provide you the exact solution, but that will be a local optimal solution. And secondly, they are slow. They sometimes, if you're not getting a good initial guess, then they may take a lot of computational time, which is represented here as computational cost. And now you can see that both the methods have their own advantages and disadvantages. And if you are aware of the nature of the problem that you are dealing with, then you can decide which algorithm you are going to use. Now we'll see, since the topic is about particle form optimization and differential evolution, which I said earlier comes under the umbrella of nature-inspired algorithms. So here is a list of some of the algorithms that have been proposed. So based on the theory of evolution, now there are so many nature-inspired algorithms, and now there are so many unconventional algorithms that that they have been classified again into different types. Like theory of evolution, we have genetic algorithms, evolutionary programming, and differential evolution. Based on the behavior of a species, we have swarm intelligence algorithms like particle swarm, artificial bee colony, ant colony, glow swarm, firefly, etc. Then based on other natural phenomena, we have artificial neural networks, artificial immune system, intelligent water drop algorithms, weed algorithm, gravitational search algorithm, and so on. But besides these, there are several other algorithms. There are algorithms that are based on physical phenomena. There are algorithms which particularly make use of some laws of physics like electromagnetic optimization, electromagnetic charge optimization, and things like that. Okay. Now we'll come to some probabilistic methods again. This is the chronological representation. I have listed the algorithms only till 2009. Many algorithms have been proposed since then, and there are so many algorithms that it becomes, I mean, almost in almost all the journals, you see some algorithm which is claimed to be based on some natural phenomena. But again, I'll say that as per my opinion, I still feel that differential evolution and particle form optimization are two of the best algorithms besides genetic algorithms. And if you are talking about discrete optimization problems, that is, if your problem is discrete in nature, then ant colony optimization is probably one of the best algorithms. I have not dealt with many discrete optimization problems, so I mean, personally, I have not used ant colony that much. But yes, ant colony is supposed to be one of the best algorithms for discrete optimization problems. And then scatter search is not used very frequently, but still it is a very good algorithm, scatter search. And taboo search is also good, but After that, most of the algorithms, they just change one parameter here and there, and then they claim that this is a new algorithm. So anyway, we'll come to nature-inspired algorithms now. Now they are not so new, but considering the classical optimization methods, nature-inspired algorithms still can be considered to be a relatively newer field in optimization. They all are based on some natural or social metaphor, and the basic philosophy of nature-inspired algorithms is that at a very low level, there is an urge for survival in living organisms. They have to search for food, hide from predators and weather conditions. They need to mate, organize their homes, etc. That is, what we are trying to say from this sentence is that they always try to excel. That is, they always try to improve their performance. And this is the basic philosophy of nature-inspired algorithms. And this we have already seen in the previous slide that the motivation is to provide generic type of algorithms that can be used for solving any type of problem. But here, by any type of problem, you can say the emphasis is on the problems for which the nature is not known to us. For the problems for which um, we are not clear about their mathematical properties. So first one in this lecture is the particle form optimization. This algorithm was proposed by Kennedy and Eberhard in 1995. And basically, its mechanism is based on the social and cooperative behavior displayed by various species in nature. So, one of them, James Kennedy and Russell Eberhard. Eberhard was an electrical engineer, and Kennedy was a sociologist. He was dealing with sociology. So, what Kennedy observed was that if you see the flock of birds flying in the sky or the fish of a school in some river or pond, then you will observe that they keep on following each other without colliding with each other, and they always change their direction. That is, they keep on changing their leader. The leading bird or the leading fish may change from time to time according to the direction in which they have to move. So this was the behavior that was identified, and it was modeled mathematically. That is, no collision and change of leader from time to time. And that leader is changed when they observe that if they move in a particular direction, the chances of getting food are higher. So it was basically on the foraging behavior displayed by species that move together in groups. So this was called the collective and synchronized behavior without any particular leader. That is, the leader keeps on changing from time to time. And secondly, the mutual interaction among individuals, like they are always near to each other, they do not collide with their neighbors, and they match. The collision is not there because they maintain the velocity. Whatever is the velocity of the leader or the leading particle, the same will be the velocity of other particles that are in its neighborhood. They move very close to each other. If you ever get a chance, you observe it, and you will see that the flock or the group or the swarm, they are very close to each other, but still they do not collide with each other. And the reason is that they all are moving with the same velocity. They have the same speed, due to which they do not collide. As I already told you, that this was developed by Kennedy and Eberhard, who were social psychologists and electrical engineers, respectively. And it is a stochastic optimization technique. This we already know now. And Now, in this slide, the important points are that all the solution vectors that are generated are known as the particles or agents that move around in the search space, and each particle is treated as a point in an n-dimensional in an n-dimensional space, which adjusts its flying. Flying here is representing the speed according to its own flying experience as well as the flying experience of other particles. This particular last sentence is representing the socio-cooperative behavior. The terminology of particle form optimization is the two words that are most frequently used are the personal based and the global based. Personal based mathematically represents the local optimal solution, and G based or global based represents the global optimal solution. The basic concept of PSO lies in accelerating each particle towards its P-best and G-best locations with a random weighted acceleration at each time step. That is, velocity and acceleration are two things that are maintained in a particle form optimization algorithm. These are the terminologies: particles or swarms. These represents the solution vectors in the search space. Velocity vector, this is something that we calculate. Position vector is the coordinates. These are the coordinates which tell you about the location of a particle. Then P best and G best, I already told you, they represent the local solution and the global solution. Inertia weight is because this is a type of weighted approach in which weights are given to different parameters. Inertia weight is something that we provide in the algorithm in the beginning. Then acceleration constants, that is how we are maintaining the speed or velocity of the particles in the search space. Okay, now there are two equations. There are two main equations that that represent the behavior of a particle form optimization. The first one is the velocity vector, and this is how we represent it. The second one is the position vector, or this will give you the coordinate of the particle that is there in the search space. If you have a closer look and just go on, the velocity vector is the main equation. The position vector is the secondary equation that will help in moving the points from one place to another. So emphasis is given to the velocity equation. You can have a look at it. A closer look at it, we'll see. This equation is made up of three components. The cognitive component and the social component tells you about the personal thinking of the particle, that is the P best, and the third component tells you about the social component or the cooperation among the particles. Mathematically, they are representing you, the second and the third terms are representing you the sum of weighted vectors, where C1 R1 and C2 R2 are representing a type of weight. Then the first term is the weighted term in which inertia weight is used, and VID is the velocity which was previously attained by the particle. C1, C2 are acceleration constants. These are provided by the user, and these are provided in the sense how much weightage you want to give to the local solution or to the global solution. And R1 and R2 are the uniformly generated random numbers in the range 0 and 1. These values are random in nature, and they will keep on changing in every iteration because in order to provide randomness to the velocity vector equation. Because what will happen is, if you will keep it constant, if you will just keep the constant C1 and C2, then the movement will be very in a very defined manner, that you are not changing the values of the constants, acceleration constants. But the moment you add the randomness in it, it will be more diversity oriented. That is, your algorithm will become more diverse in nature now. So again, how the particles are trying to improve their position. In one of the slides, it was mentioned that there is an urge to improve the solution. So how this urge is satisfied? So every particle will try to modify its position from time to time using the following information, that is the current positions, the current velocities, the distance between the current position in P base, the distance between the current position in G base, which was represented by the second and the third terms in the velocity vector equation. And here X is representing the design variable. It can be of n dimension. An example is provided here, the step-by-step procedure of particle form optimization. A very simple example is taken. This is representing a paraboloid in which the optimum lies at origin. These are the computational steps. The first step is initialization, which is common in all the nature-inspired algorithms. We always start by initializing the swarm, by initializing the particles, by initializing the solution vectors. The swarm or the particles, they are representing nothing but the solution vectors for the design variables that we are having in our problem. Fitness function, now we already know fitness function means the objective function. That is, the better the function, the better the value that we are getting, the better is the fitness of the particle. Personal based and global based positions are calculated, velocities and positions are updated, and since this is an iterated method, several iterations take place before reaching to the final solution. This is one of the most commonly used method for generating random numbers between the given boundaries. We are talking about an unconstrained optimization problem having only the boundary conditions, that is having only the bound constraints. This is how a representation of solution will look like. Since we were talking about a two-dimensional problem, each particle in the swarm is representing a two-dimensional vector as provided here. It could have been a three-dimensional problem, it could have been a four-dimensional problem, or so on, and every particle would have represented that particular vector. Fitness function evaluation, we calculate the value of the objective function in order to identify which is the most fit particle. So, since it was a minimization problem, the best value is obtained by the fourth particle. And we say that now the particle 4 or the fourth number particle has now become the leader of the swarm because it is having the best value. All the other particles from x1, x2, x3 and x5 will start following x4 now. Initially, all the particles were global based and local based particles. But now that we know that the fitness of the fourth particle is the smallest, and since we were talking about the minimization problem, x4 will become the leader of the swarm. Velocity vector is something that we can generate randomly in the beginning because initially we are the ones who are assigning velocity to the particles. In a very basic sense, some of the researchers also take the initial velocity to be 0, assuming the particles to be at rest in the initial condition. Now, just notice that whatever we are doing, whatever vectors we are considering will be uniform. If it is a two-dimensional vector, if it is a two-dimensional problem, then whatever vectors we are generating will follow the same dimensionality. Simple mathematics here. Now, these are some calculations. We calculated for every particle component by component. That is for x11, x12, x21, x22, like that. We calculate the velocity and the position for all the components. That is, everywhere you are following the simple vector mathematics. Simple vector arithmetic you have to follow in all the steps of particle swarm optimization, nothing else. If you're getting some values that are out of bound, you can do two things. One is mentioned here, you can truncate them and bring them within the range. Secondly, you can generate random numbers again between the given bounds. So this is component by component calculation. We move on from one particle to another particle, and we get an updated swarm. Updated swarm means that now the coordinates of all the particles are changed from their initial position and they have moved on to some other place. Since we were talking about a two-dimensional problem, it is representing x-axis and y-axis, x coordinate and y coordinate. Now you can see that initially the fourth particle was the leader of the swarm, but at the end of the first iteration, the first particle has become the leader of the swarm. So all the particles will start following the first particle and start following mathematically, it is in the velocity equation where you are taking the distance of two vectors. That is, now you will take the distance of particles from x2 to x5 from x1. Again, simple vector arithmetics and simple Euclidean distance concept also you can consider. This is the table for the initial form and the updated form side by side. Here you can see how the values have changed, and although it was a very simple problem, you can see that in the second step itself there is an improvement by almost 50%. Initially our value was 4.4, and in the second step itself it is 2 point something, or you can say it is 2. So the solution is lying somewhere near 0, or it is exact 0, but we may not be able to reach to exact 0 because since we are doing this computer calculation where 0 does not have any place, we will be reaching very near to 0. So you can see that in the second iteration itself, we are getting a solution improvement by 50%. And there is a reason for it also, because this function is a very well-defined function. It is having a very well-defined gradient, and since the algorithm is also very good, it is moving very fast towards the optimum solution. You can see it once again. The GBES now will be X1, that is X1 will now become the leader. Graphically, this is how the point transition looks like. These are only 5 points, but if you take a number of points, you will be able to see them more properly. These are also called the methods which contract the search space. That is, they keep on reducing the search step in every iteration. This is the graphical or the more mathematical representation of particle swarm optimization. As I already said, everything is vector arithmetic based here. These are the basic parameters of particle swarm optimization that are to be defined by the user in the beginning. These are the parameters. You have to define W is to be given by the user, C1, C2 are to be given by the user, and R1 and R2, they are defined, they are uniformly generated. These are some this is mostly taken from literature which different researchers have suggested about the values of parameters. different values that have been, a lot of work has already been done on how to define the parameters for particle form optimization, whether the value of inertia weight should be taken greater than 1, or it should be between 0 and 1, should be less than 0, and like that. And it was observed by many researchers that the values of acceleration constants, if there are near about 2, it will give you good result. 1.4 something has been mentioned, but even more than that and less than 2 gives good enough results. There were some suggestions about dynamically varying the inertia weight and the acceleration constants. That is, instead of keeping them static all the time, we can make them dynamic. That is, they keep on changing in every iteration. This again was suggested to provide more randomness in the algorithm. Some basic changes, that is some very initial, these changes were suggested in the very beginning, that is some initial changes. The social only model and the cognition only model. In cognition, both the models, they differ from each other in whether you are planning to give importance to the local solution or to the global solution. So if your problem is unimodal in nature, which again is very difficult to identify in the beginning itself, this particular problem that I showed here as an example is a unimodal problem. And here, even if you use the global model of particle form optimization, you will get results very fast. But if the problem is having several local and global optimal solutions, then the local only model becomes difficult. The local only model becomes difficult because here we are not, there is a probability of getting stuck in some local region. If the problem is transcendental in nature, that is, if the objective function is transcendental, or if it is having several trigonometric terms involved in it, then definitely it will be multimodal in nature. It won't be having a single optimal solution. That is, it won't be having a single global solution. It will be having multiple solutions. So you can take this as an analysis that what is the nature of your problem. Otherwise, it is very difficult to identify the nature of the problems initially. Because if the problem is of high dimensions, you won't be able to plot it also, just to see the nature. And on the top, there are some different values of C1 and C2 as defined by the researchers, or the analysis done by the researchers. Next is the differential evolution. Differential evolution is an enhanced version of genetic algorithms. That is, in the sense, it uses the same operators like that of genetic algorithms. This algorithm was also introduced in 1995, and it was done by Stone and Price. And this algorithm was suggested as a part of a competition in which it won the 3rd prize. But since it was easier to use than the first two, than the algorithms that got the 1st and 2nd position, differential evolution became very popular. Its difference from genetic algorithm is one of the most important differences that it makes use of real values. It makes use of floating point numbers instead of binary numbers as used by genetic algorithms initially. These are some of the differences between genetic algorithms and differential evolution. Initially, in genetic algorithms, the fitness function was defined in a particular manner. And initially, genetic algorithms were designed only for solving the maximization problems. And if we had to solve it for minimization problem, a certain transformation function was used. Most are common in genetic algorithms and differential evolution, but in the sense of operators only. These are the order of operators in genetic algorithms, and these are the order of operators in differential evolution. That is, in differential evolution, mutation is the most important operator, followed by crossover and followed by selection. Whereas in genetic algorithms, selection is done for the gene pool in the beginning itself. This is followed by crossover, and mutation is given very, very, very small probability. Whereas in differential evolution, in every step, mutation takes place. The properties of differential evolution algorithms are similar to that of particle swarm optimization. There is not much difference in it. Both more or less they have the same functionality, but because of particular operators, and also differential evolution has a very different type of selection criteria. This is what makes it different from the contemporary optimization algorithms that are present. The terminology of differential evolution is target vector, base vector, mutated or perturbed vector, and trial vectors. Again, if you see the step-by-step procedure of differential evolution, the first step is three main, not parameters, but it has three main vectors, x, y, and z, where x is for base vector and y is the number of difference vectors that we are going to have. Z is the crossover scheme that we are going to have. And for this particular presentation, we are going to use the strategy as d/rand/1/bin. This, the VIG here is representing the mutation. In particle swarm optimization, the main operator was the velocity equation, which was helping us in deciding the transition of points in the search space. In this, mutation is the main operator, and it is represented as V here, and X is representing the base vector. F is representing the scaling factor, and the last component of this equation is representing the difference vector. Now again, if you see the step-by-step procedure of differential evolution, the first step is same as that of particle swarm optimization, that is random initialization of the population, and this is done exactly in the same manner as that of particle swarm optimization. The equation that is used here is also the same. Mutation operator, as I told you, is the prime operator or the main operator, and it depends on the number of difference vectors that we are having and how we are selecting the base vector. This is the vector representation. This is the graphical representation of differential evolution. These are the different mutation strategies that we have for differential evolution. You can have a look at it. Depending on the number of difference vectors, we define the last term. If the last term is 1, it means that the mutation operator is having only one difference vector. If the last component is 2, it means it is having 2, and so on. So here you can see that at the most we have 2 difference vectors for a mutation equation, and the middle term, that is the term that is rand, that is telling you the base vector that is being selected. That is the first component of the equation. So if it is selected randomly, then we write random here. If it is written best, then it means that we are selecting the best component of the solution space as the base vector. This type of, when we are using base vector as the best vector of the solution space, then we are making our algorithm slightly greedy in nature. That is, we are always following the best solution of the search space. Whereas the first and the second mutation strategies that are provided here, they are more random in nature. This is the crossover operator. This crossover operator is somewhat similar to the crossover operator in genetic algorithms. This is nothing but the exchange of components between the two solution vectors that we are having, which are decided on the basis of some crossover probability. Selection operator, as I told you, is quite unique in differential evolution, but I think you'll be able to understand it better with the help of an example. So this time we are taking a simpler example. We are considering a linear function subject to the box constraints. We'll proceed in the similar manner as that of particle form optimization. That is, we'll generate the solution vectors in the search space. This is called initialization, and we will calculate the value of the objective function for these points in the solution space. The target vectors and the corresponding function value. Target vector are named so because these are the vectors, or these are the solution vectors on which we are going to perform some mathematical operation. Now coming to the mutation part, here we make use of at least 3 vectors. And since we are using the first mutation strategy, suppose these are the vectors that have been selected corresponding to the target vector. Here we have to take care of one thing, that the index of the target vector is different from that of the index of the base vector and the vector selected for the difference vector component. So all the things will be different from each other. That is completely, we don't want any bias in our solution. The scaling factor is taken as 0.8. We'll make use of the mathematical equation that was given, and we will calculate the mutant vector corresponding to the target vector. In a differential evolution, a unique thing is that all the operations are done on one-to-one basis. That is, corresponding to x1, we will get v1, corresponding to x2, we will get v2, and so on. There is always one-to-one mapping in case of differential evolution. Crossover is done between the target vector, that is the initial solution vectors that we were having, and the mutant vectors, that is the solution vectors that we obtained after performing the mutation operation. And here we will generate trial vector, which is generated after performing crossover between the target vector and the mutant vector. If you have read genetic algorithm, if you have worked on genetic algorithms, then you might be knowing that any solution vector can have a crossover with any other solution vector in the search space. But in case of differential evolution, crossover is done on one-to-one basis. That is, x1 can have a crossover with v1 only. X2 will crossover with v2 only, x3 with v3 only, and like that. And after crossover, we will get a trial vector. As I told you, trial vector or vector generated after crossover is nothing but the change of components. And this change of components is obtained by generating a random number between 0 and 1 and by defining a crossover probability. Crossover probability of 0.5 means that we are giving equal importance to target vector and to the mutant vector. So this is what we are getting. We are generating a random number, and this is what we are getting. We generated a random number 0.31, and since 0.31 is less than 0.5, we copied the component of the mutant vector into the trial vector. Then we got a random number 0.72, and since 0.72 is higher than 0.5, we copied the component of the target vector into the trial vector. Fitness is calculated for the target vector. Fitness is calculated for the trial vector. Now, selection will be done again on one-to-one basis. That is called the tournament selection between the trial vector and the target vector. Whichever one is having a better solution value will move on to the next generation. So, 1.57 is less than 2.8. It will move on to the next generation. 0.4 is less than 1.8. This of the vector corresponding to this value will move on to the next generation, and so on. So these are the individuals of the next generation that we got. This is also an iterative process. It will keep on repeating. It will be repeated till we obtain a final solution. Point transition in the search space, you can see here. The control parameters of differential evolution are the scaling factor F, the crossover probability CR, and F is generally taken between 0 and 1.2. CR is generally taken between 0 and 1. And the population size and the population size depends on the number of variables that we are having in a problem. If for a small a small size problem, we can have a population size of up to 50. Then if the problem is having more than 100 variables, then we can take the population size as 2 into number of variables, and we can also take it as 10 into number of variables, depending on the complexity of the problem that we are dealing with. This is the different point transition for differential evolution. Now, from the algorithmic point of view, we usually keep a track of the number of times an algorithm is executed, the average fitness value that we obtain, and a standard deviation. Because these are stochastic optimization techniques, we cannot get an exact answer. As I already told you in the beginning, we usually get some approximate answer, or we say that we get some average answer. The average value of the answer is considered. The number of function evaluations, the average CPU time that an algorithm is taking, and success rate. Success rate is calculated when we are talking about when we are developing some new algorithm. When we are testing some new algorithm, then we talk about success rate, that how successful our algorithm is in obtaining the already known solution. Then when do we stop the algorithm? We can consider number of generations, we can consider number of function evaluations, we can define some accuracy criteria, how much accurate we want our answer to be. Then for validating the algorithm, all these things are done when we are developing some new algorithm. When we are making some modifications in the existing algorithm, or when we are proposing a new algorithm, then we have to take care of these particular things. These are some benchmark problems that are generally used for testing the performance of an algorithm. Different functions, different properties. All these functions are very well known, and these are used for testing the efficiency of an algorithm. There are certain problems associated with all the nature-inspired algorithms, including particle swarm optimization and differential evolution. These include lack of diversity, that is all the points, they start getting concentrated towards a particular location only, which leads to premature convergence, which may be a local optimal solution. And all these things happen because of the imbalance between exploration and exploitation, which is nothing but the global search and the local search. When you are searching the entire search space, it is called exploration. When you are searching the solution nearby a solution vector, then it is called exploitation. In the initial phase, we give emphasis to exploration phase. We give importance to exploration, and as the algorithm proceeds, we are more interested in finding out the exploitation as well. This is one of the mathematical formulation for calculating the diversity of an algorithm. These things were calculated during the initial phases. That is when these algorithms started becoming popular, or when these algorithms the users became interested in it, then different aspects of it were searched, and one of them was diversity. And this is how the diversity looks like mathematically. These are some of the mechanisms by which the researchers suggest from time to time to improve the performance of PSOND, because as I told you, if the problem is having a number of local and global optimum, then sometimes these algorithms get stuck in some local optimizer. Initiating the population is because this is the first step of an optimization algorithm, initialization. It plays a very important role in the success of an algorithm. We generally make use of uniformly distributed random numbers, but instead of that, we can try for other type of random numbers also, which are quasi-random numbers or pseudo-random numbers. Sobol sequence is a quasi-random number sequence. And you can see that the initial search space generated by Sobol sequence is more defined than the computer generated random numbers. Tuning of parameters, some of this we have already seen in the previous slide, in one of the previous slides, how we can adjust our parameters that are there in our algorithm. Hybridization perspectives are also there, in which we try to make use of the operators or the concepts of one algorithm into the other. Then different types of probability distributions for mutation, because the main thing in these algorithms is how the points are moving in a space. So we can make use of some probability distribution also, because all these, what are they representing? They are representing some sort of random variables. These are the things that have already been tested in different algorithms. Researchers have already tried it. And this is also an interesting concept, that is when you hybridize the algorithms with some already well-known local search technique. Like steepest descent, golden section, Powell method, all these are good local search techniques. So if you are aware of a number of local optimal solutions, then there is a possibility that you will find the global solution also easily. These are the variants of particle form optimization. Actually, all these variants are also available for differential evolution also, because both the algorithms were designed particularly for solving the real variable problems. And in order to modify them for different problems like discrete, modifications were done on it. So these things are available for differential evolution also. Okay. I'm sorry, it ended a bit abruptly, but that is all for today. So I'm open for questions now.
Hello, audience. You can ask the question if you have that. Yadav has asked some question. Can we use FEAs to solve convex optimization problems as well as non-convex problems?
I didn't get the question correctly. Can we use the algorithms for convex as well as non-convex optimization problems?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Yeah, it is in the chat window, ma'am.
Chat, I'll start the chat now.
Yeah, in the same Google Meet.
This is, can PSO techniques be applied for colored noise minimization? Yes, it can be applied. We can apply PSO there if you have an objective function designed particularly in the form of a minimization problem. To say yes, PSO and DE algorithms have been very frequently used for in neural networks. Yes, they have been used and very successfully used.
Okay, ma'am. Any other question?
Ma'am, if we have one interdependent function and another one, the objective function is dependent on only one function, then how we will solve the thing in case of the PA?
In case of PSO, you mean? In case of PSO, you said?
Ma'am, we are having, let's say, two variables, x1 and x2, but our objective function only in terms of x1. We defined our objective function only in terms of x1. Is it possible to solve this by means of PSO?
Yes, you can make use of PSO here, but I think there will be some classical optimization classical optimization method that will be more useful here, because if one variable is redundant and you are having finally only you are left only with one variable. And what is the nature of your problem? Is it linear or non-linear?
It is
Probably
a non-linear
non-linear.
problem.
Yes, it should be a non-linear problem, but it is being reduced to a single variable. Then maybe is calculus not working here? Calculus approach is not working here.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, you can make use of calculus approach here because that will give you the best solution.
Actually, one engineering problem is there, and in that problem, constraint functions are there, but the objective function is defined only in terms of few variables. Not all the variables are
No,
considered.
that is possible. That is possible. In the constraints, you might be having other variables. Yeah, the objective may be depending only on one or two variables, but there can be constraints that are having more than two variables. This is possible, and yes, you can apply particle sum or differential evolution here. You can apply it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question? Well, in that case, Madam, thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Madam, the optimization algorithms that you have discussed the overview kind of initially in the first half, and then you switched to particle swarm optimization. So that slide I just captured the screen, even the taxonomy of optimization problems. So
Okay, thank you.
yes, because in physiology also, particularly when we are solving these inverse problems, so we have to make some choice of suitable optimization algorithm.
Yes.
So sometimes we find difficulty that if the parameters are too much in the OD mode setup.
Yes. Yeah, I was also trying to find out where optimization techniques are used in physiology problems. So the most of the results that I got were for parameter optimization.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my email ID is there. If anyone wants to ask anything else, I will answer it on the mail also. So should
Yes,
I
ma'am.
leave now?
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much for being the wonderful audience.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Have a nice time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Audience, here is an announcement that today's afternoon session is suspended. The speaker is unavailable due to some emergency. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. So tomorrow we shall start at 10:50 a.m. as usual. Tomorrow the first session is by Dr. Arnav. It would be on Introduction to the State-of-the-Art Machine Learning Techniques. And tomorrow afternoon I shall be presenting Detecting Cardiac Conditions via lumped parameter modeling. So particularly I shall be presenting our work on detecting coronary artery disease and atherosclerosis. So see you at 10:50 a.m. in the morning. Thank you.